At the heart of Brazil's economy, there is a titan, agribusiness. It's massive, powerful, and globally dominant. But what if I told you this giant is standing on feet of clay? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into the data from April 2026 to uncover the deep vulnerabilities hiding just beneath its incredible strength.
So just to try and wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this thing, let's start with this number, 2.72 trillion reals. Now, that was the sector's contribution to Brazil's GDP back in 2024, according to CPIA. It's a figure so big, it's honestly hard to even picture.
And where does all that power come from? A huge chunk of it is exports. In 2025, the sector brought in a jaw-dropping 169 billion US dollars. That's a record. And we're not just talking about revenue here. This is the engine that pumps foreign currency into the country and pretty much keeps Brazil's entire trade balance in the black.
But its impact goes way beyond just money. Think about this. We're talking about almost 29 million jobs. That is a massive slice of the entire workforce, especially when you think about all the smaller towns across the country that depend on it. It's an economic, financial, and social powerhouse all rolled into one. Okay, so we've established it's a giant. No question about that. But how do you actually measure something so massive? Let's take a closer look and break down where these incredible numbers really come from. All right, first things first, this is a crucial point. When we say agribusiness, we're not just talking about what happens on the farm. It's the whole system, the entire chain. It starts way before the farm gate, with all the companies making seeds, fertilizers, and machinery. And it goes way beyond the farm gate, to the industries that process the food and all the services that get it to your table. And that huge scope leads to a surprisingly tricky question. If agribusiness includes everything from tractors to supermarkets, how much of the national economy does it actually represent? This is where things get really interesting.
You know, this slide right here is key to understanding why you hear such wildly different numbers thrown around. So Brazil's official statistics agency, IBGE, they only measure what happens inside the farm gate. By that count, it's about 7% of GDP. But CPIA, on the other hand, measures the entire value chain, and they come up with a much, much bigger number, 23.2%. Now, neither one is wrong, they're just measuring different things. But for our purposes, that CPIA number gives us a much truer sense of the sector's total economic footprint.
So we've got a handle on its enormous size. Now let's get to the real core of this analysis, how all this incredible strength is balanced by some pretty serious fragility. As you're about to see, they're really just two sides of the same coin.
The strengths, they're just undeniable. Brazil isn't just a player on the world stage. In many ways, it's a dominant force. We're talking about the world's top exporter of soy, beef, and chicken. And get this, in a huge shift, it even blew past the United States in 2025 to become the #1 exporter of cotton. That's what global leadership looks like.
But, and this is a huge but, here's where we see the first major crack in that foundation. For a product as vital as soy, roughly half of all exports go to one single country, China. Think about that. When about 50% of your business depends on one client, you're not really in control. They are. And that brings us to the second big weakness. The contrast here is just stark. On one side, you've got these massive export revenues, but on the other, an 85% dependency on imported fertilizers. That means the very foundation of Brazil's productivity is totally vulnerable to global supply chains, conflicts, and price shocks that are completely outside of its control. Now, this massive growth doesn't come for free. It's time to pull back the curtain and look at the hidden costs, the structural problems that those big, flashy headline numbers just don't capture. And the biggest hidden cost is, without a doubt, environmental. According to Matt Biomas, a staggering 97% of all deforestation in Brazil in recent years was linked to agricultural activities. That's a direct, undeniable line connecting the sector's expansion to the loss of vital ecosystems like the Amazon and the Cerrado. And this is a really critical point to understand. Agribusiness isn't just one single thing. This quote here really captures that duality perfectly. You have a modern, high-tech, innovative sector that exists right alongside a predatory one that's rooted in devastation. So treating the entire sector as either all good or all bad is just a massive analytical mistake. On top of all that, there's this chronic internal headache that everyone in Brazil knows about, the custo Brasil, or the Brazil cost. We're talking about terrible roads and inefficient ports that mean a huge chunk of value is just lost, gone, before the products even get on a ship.
A Brazilian farmer might spend 3 times more on freight to get their grain to a port than an American farmer would for the exact same distance. That's a huge competitive disadvantage baked right into the system. Okay, so let's zoom out. Because all of these internal factors come into play on the world stage. Brazilian agribusiness doesn't operate in a bubble. It's a major piece on a global chessboard, and it's facing some serious external pressures.
This matrix here does a pretty good job of laying out the key threats. An extreme climate event, like a major drought. High probability, high impact. A sudden shift in trade with China might be less likely, but you can bet the impact would be absolutely massive. And those new European regulations, they aren't a question of if, but when. Let this one sink in for a second. The dependency on China, it's not a commercial risk anymore. It's a sovereign risk. When your entire national trade balance, a pillar of your economy, hinges on the political and economic decisions of one other country, it becomes an issue of national security. It puts your country's very sovereignty on the line. And speaking of those regulations, the EU's new deforestation regulation is a total game changer. It's the clearest signal we've gotten yet that major world markets are about to start demanding proof that products are not linked to deforestation. Traceability is shifting fast from a nice-to-have ESG feature to a mandatory license to even do business. So, given these massive strengths and these incredibly critical vulnerabilities, what does the future hold? What's the path forward for this economic giant with feet of clay? It really brings us to the central question of this whole analysis. Is agribusiness an engine of development, or is it a vector of dependency? And if we're being honest, the answer is, well, it's both. It creates incredible wealth and millions of jobs, but it also locks Brazil into being dependent on commodity exports, on one single major buyer, and on foreign inputs. So, the path to a more resilient future seems to involve 4 key strategic steps. Number 1, add more value at home instead of just shipping raw materials out the door. 2, actively diversify markets to reduce that huge sovereign risk from relying so heavily on China. 3, tackle that critical dependency on imported inputs. And finally, number 4, turn sustainability from a regulatory headache into a powerful, marketable, competitive advantage. Whew, we have covered a ton of ground, from trillions of reais all the way to the complexities of global trade. If you enjoy these kinds of deep dives that connect macroeconomics, technology, and AI, please be sure to follow our channel, Macroeconomy IA. You can find the links to all the source materials for this analysis right there in the description. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you for the next one. And just before we go, the usual but important disclaimer. This material is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not an investment recommendation or any kind of financial advice. All the information we've presented is based on public sources that were available as of April 2026 and reflects the analysis based on that data at that time.